My mum couldn't be here tonight, but she wanted to make sure every mother in the family felt special. That is what my son said, standing at the head of a long table set for 14, raising a glass of wine I had paid for, in a restaurant I had never heard of. On a Mother's Day, I was spending alone on the other side of the ocean. I know he said it because my granddaughter filmed it. I was sitting at a small cafe in Cascais, Portugal, with the Atlantic in front of me, turning the colour of a copper pan. My name is Marianne Whitaker. I am 72 years old, and 4 years earlier, I had buried my husband, Paul, a man who spent 40 years pulling electrical wire through the walls of half the houses in our county, and who never once let a live current surprise him, because he always checked what he was touching. First, I had a glass of white wine I had barely sipped. I had a blue leather travel wallet on the table, the one Paul and I filled with plans we never got to use. And I had my phone, face up beside the wallet, buzzing. The first buzz was a transaction alert, a pending charge, a restaurant near Greg's house in Pennsylvania, $2,140. I read it twice. I had not made that charge. I had not authorized that charge. I was 6 hours ahead of Greg and an ocean away from any table he might be sitting at. The second buzz was the video from Abby, my oldest granddaughter, 17, and honest in a way the adults in her house had stopped being. I watched it with my reading glasses pushed up my nose and the sunset going soft behind the screen. 14 people, white roses down the middle of the table. Lorna's mother, Diane, in the seat of honour, with a corsage pinned to her jacket. Lorna's sisters, cousins I half recognised, friends I did not. Greg at the head of it, glass lifted, smiling like a man who had done something generous. There was no empty chair for me, not one. They had not left a place and mourned my absence. They had counted the seats they needed and stopped counting. I set the phone down. The wine had gone warm. Somewhere behind me a gull complained about nothing. I did not cry. I want to be honest about that, because for years I would have cried, and then apologized for crying, and then found a reason it was my fault. Instead, I looked at that blue wallet, and I thought about how Paul used to test a wire before he trusted it, and I understood that I had spent 4 years trusting a wire I had never once checked. I would like to tell you the dinner was the first time. It was not the first time, it was only the loudest. It began, the way these things always begin, with real need and real love. Greg's sales job got restructured 2 years after Paul died, and his income dropped, and he was too proud to say by how much. I did not want the girls to go without, so I helped. Abby's braces, Sophie's prescription, the one their insurance fought them on every month. A mortgage payment during a month that had gone sideways. A furnace that quit in January. I would help anyone I loved with a furnace in January. I do not regret $1 of the furnace. To make the real emergencies simple, I added Greg as an authorized user on one of my credit cards. I said it plainly at my own kitchen table, over the chipped blue mug I have had since Reagan was president. The card is for the children. Medical, school, real emergencies. Not for wants. Greg nodded. He meant it that day. I believe he meant it. But emergencies have a way of relaxing into conveniences when no one is watching the ledger. First, it was a grocery charge, the day before a family cookout I learned about from a photograph. Then a tank of gas. Then a dinner out. Then a hotel deposit he swore he would repay after his commission cleared. Every single time I asked, Greg had a reason that sounded like a reasonable man's reason. He was waiting on a check. Sophie had needed shoes. Lorna was stressed. He would pay me back after the bonus. The bonus was always coming. The money almost never came back. I remember one call in particular, a Sunday in the spring. Greg talked warmly about the girls for 10 minutes before he arrived at the reason he had called. "Mom, I hate to even bring it up," he he said. It's really more for Sophie than anything. All the other girls on the team have the good bag, the real cleats, the whole setup. I just don't want her to be the one kid standing out for the wrong reason. You know how cruel that age can be. You'd want her to feel like she belongs. He never said a number. He never said the word money. He folded a want inside a worry about his daughter, set it gently on my kitchen table, and waited, because he had learned that I could not say no to a child left standing on the outside. I paid for the cleats and the bag, and somehow a tournament hotel 3 weeks later. And here is the part I told no one, because I was ashamed of it. I kept helping partly because I was afraid that if I stopped, I would stop being invited at all. Greg never once said, "Pay, or you don't see the girls." He was smarter than that. He simply called more warmly when a payment cleared and got very busy when it didn't. Meanwhile, Diane, Lorna's mother, was at everything. School plays, Sunday dinners, the lake weekend. I was told those things would be too crowded, too late, or too tiring for me. Too tiring. I drove myself to Portugal's departure gate at 4 in the morning, but a Tuesday supper was too tiring. I told myself, the things you tell yourself. He's grieving too. He's under pressure. Families are complicated. It's only one holiday. I had a whole drawer of little forgivenesses, folded neat as dish towels. By the time I watched that toast from a cafe in Cascais, I understood those years had not been a string of separate misunderstandings. They had been rehearsal, and Mother's Day was opening night. I watched Abby's video a second time, not to punish myself, but to be sure. Greg finished his toast. The table applauded. Diane touched her corsage and looked pleased. And then, under the video, a second message from Abby arrived. One line, typed by a 17-year-old who could not make the math work in her head. "Grandma, did you really offer to pay for this? Dad said you wanted to." I read that line, and the wine and the sunset and the gulls all went very far away. Because that is the sentence that changed everything. Greg had not simply used my card without asking. I could have survived the card. He had used my name. He had stood in front of 14 people and turned my absence into my blessing. He had taken a woman who was not invited and dressed her up as the generous soul behind the whole evening. My money bought the roses. My name took the credit. My son got the warm applause, and I got a chair that did not exist. I typed back to Abby carefully. "The way you speak to someone standing near an edge." "No, sweetheart, I did not offer. I did not know about it. Thank you for asking me, instead of assuming." 3 dots appeared and disappeared and appeared again. She did not know what to say. Neither would I have, at 17. I set the phone down and picked up the blue travel wallet instead, because I needed to hold something that was honestly mine. Paul's handwriting was still on the itinerary inside, blue ink gone slightly grey. Lisbon, Cascais. Watch the sun go down over the water. We never made it. He got too sick, and then he was gone. And I locked the wallet away and told myself, someday, the way you tell a child, maybe later, when you mean no. Someday had finally arrived, and my son had scheduled a $2,000 performance on top of it. I did not call the restaurant. I did not text the family group. I did not send a single furious word into the evening. I finished watching the sun touch the water, because I had waited 4 years for that, and I was not going to let Greg take the sunset too. Then I opened the banking app, found the card, and looked at the small grey words at the bottom of Greg's line. Authorized user. Not owner, not co-owner, authorized, a permission. And a permission, unlike a promise, is something the person who granted it can quietly take back. My thumb hovered over. Remove, authorized user. But before I pressed it, I made myself remember something Paul had said, more than once, in the last year of his life. And I realized the man had been trying to hand me a flashlight for a dark room he could see coming, even if he could not have named the night. 6 weeks before Portugal, I had already sat across a desk from Raymond Hale, the attorney who had handled our affairs since Paul and I signed the papers on our first house. Raymond is not a dramatic man. He wears the same brown cardigan in every season, and he says things once, plainly, and lets them sit. I had gone to see him because Greg had started saying a word that did not belong to him. He had begun introducing himself to people as the man who handled Mom's finances. I still balanced my own checkbook at my own table with my own reading glasses. But there he was, at a barbecue, telling a neighbor he took care of things for me now. And he had started talking about my house, the way you talk about a car you already own, mentioning the kitchen he would redo someday, as though the deed were already breathing his name. Raymond had listened, and then he had opened a folder. "Your husband asked me something, a year or so before he passed," Raymond said. "He never told me what to do about it. He wasn't like that. He said, 'Ray, Greg's a good boy who's careless with money, and Marianne's a generous woman who can't say no to him.' He said, 'One day those two things are going to meet in a bad place.' He asked me to make sure you'd have options when they did. That's all. He worried about the pattern. He didn't pretend to know the ending. That was the thing about Paul. He never once predicted this. He did not leave a letter naming Greg like a prophet or set a perfect trap to spring on a date. He was an electrician. He believed you did not have to know exactly where a fault would occur to know that an ungrounded line was dangerous. You just grounded it and slept better. At that first meeting, Raymond had prepared the documents, removing Greg as my financial power of attorney, removing him as executor of my estate, naming an independent professional to step in if I ever could not manage my own affairs. And I had not signed them. I had folded my hands on Raymond's desk and said I needed to think. Part of me still hoped I was misjudging my own son. A mother will forgive one more time, long past the point where the arithmetic has stopped working. That is not weakness, exactly. It is love that keeps extending credit long after the account has stopped being honest. The Mother's Day toast checked it for me. From a cafe table in Cascais, I removed Greg as an authorized user and froze the card, so the restaurant's final balance would find nothing of mine left to charge. Then I wrote Raymond, one email, my glasses fogging in the sea air. "Raymond, I've seen enough. Please complete everything we discussed, all of it. Marianne." Over the next 3 days, from a rented room with a view of red rooftops, I read every page he sent, out loud, to no one but myself. The way Paul used to read a contract before he signed it. I ended the monthly transfers. I had been quietly sending Greg for over a year. I signed the papers, removing him as my power of attorney. No one arranges my life while I am still living it. I signed the papers, removing him as executor. A man who spends your future before you are gone should not be trusted to honor your wishes after. I named a neutral trust officer to act only if I ever truly could not. Raymond had also gone digging, the quiet way he does, and found something that steadied me. Years earlier, when Greg was first married, Paul had added him to a small joint authorization on an old savings account, a convenience for a young couple starting out. And Paul, without ever making a speech about it, had quietly removed that authorization 2 years before he died. He never said why. Raymond told me over the phone. He just came in one afternoon and closed it. Said the boy didn't need his hand on that particular account anymore. Paul had grounded that line himself, quietly, years before I ever knew it was there. There was no co-owner on my accounts, no lien. No recorded claim in anyone's name but mine. No one can spend what they were never given, Raymond said. And I wrote that down too. Then I asked Raymond to do 2 more things. Remove Greg from the online access he had set up on my banking, the login he had made himself, just to help me keep an eye on it. And send Greg a single certified letter, on Raymond's letterhead, stating in plain terms that my accounts, my card, and my property were mine alone. that no authority to act on my behalf existed in his name any longer, and that any assumption otherwise was simply mistaken. Not a threat, a record. A light switched on in a room someone had gotten used to walking through in the dark. The letter doesn't punish him, I said to myself as I approved it. It just stops him from tripping over furniture that was never his. And then I did the thing that mattered most, the thing that let me sleep. I created a trust for Abby and Sophie, not a pile of cash anyone could dip into. A protected trust that pays directly to the school, to the doctor, to the counsellor, to the pharmacy for their education, their health, their care, their genuine needs. Greg and Lorna cannot pull a dollar out of it. They cannot use their daughter's needs as a key to my accounts, because the key no longer fits any door I own. I did not remove my grandchildren from my heart. I wrote in the margin of my own notes. I removed their father from my signature. When I clicked to confirm the trust, I thought about the green ledger waiting at home. Paul's ledger, dark cloth cover, cracked at the spine. The one he used for 30 years to track every job, every invoice, every man he ever paid. After he died, I had started using its blank back pages, not for grief, but for accounting. 18 months of it. Every date, every amount, every stated reason, every promise, every dollar actually returned. Nearly $39,000, all told. Most of it I gave with an open hand and would give again, but almost 9,000 of it was convenience dressed as crisis, or money promised back and quietly forgotten. A record does not accuse anyone, Paul used to say about his ledger. It just refuses to forget on your behalf. I closed the laptop. The papers were signed. The trust was real. And for the first time in 4 years, my generosity had a shape and a fence and a gate that only I could open. On my last evening in Cascais, I finally opened the blue travel wallet all the way. I had carried it across an ocean and only looked at the itinerary. But tucked behind Paul's handwritten list, folded into quarters and gone soft at the creases, was a note I had never found. He must have put it there in his last good month, when he still had steady hands. I unfolded it under the cafe light with the water going dark, and I read my husband's handwriting for the first time in 4 years. Marianne, if you are reading this, it means you finally went. Good. I hope the water is as blue as they promised. I hope you ordered too much and ate all of it. I want to say something, and I only know how to say it plain. So here it is. I have watched you give and give to people who take it as their due. You give Greg the benefit of the doubt like it's a monthly bill. It's the best thing about you, and it's the thing that's going to cost you the most. I don't know what will happen after I'm gone. I'm not a fortune teller. I'm a man who pulled wire for a living. But I know how you are. So please, do not confuse peace with letting people walk on you. Do not call it family when it's only one direction. Read every page before you sign it. Ask every question, even the rude ones. And keep something for yourself, Marianne. You've spent your whole life being the outlet everybody plugs into. It's all right to keep some current for your own house. Whatever you decide, decide it yourself. Don't let me decide it for you from a drawer. You were always the smart one. I just wired the walls. Go watch the sun go down. I'll be watching it with you. Paul. I did cry then. But I want you to understand what kind of crying it was. It was not the crying of a woman who has been broken. It was the crying of a woman who has finally been believed. He had not known about Greg's toast. He had not known about the 14 chairs, or the $2,000, or the corsage on Diane's jacket. He had only known me, and known that a woman who never keeps anything back for herself will eventually be spent down to nothing by the people she loves. I folded the letter back into the wallet, next to the itinerary we never used, and the one I was now living out alone. That was the night I started keeping a small notebook of my own. Paul's green ledger already held the amounts. This one was for the other kind of accounting. The lines that only arrived once. I was finally still enough to hear them. The sun went down over the water. I watched all of it, and somewhere in the middle of it, without noise, I stopped being wounded and started being certain. Greg called me from the restaurant hallway that same night, his time, which was already my next morning. I let it ring twice before I answered, sitting on the edge of a strange bed with the shutters open. Mom. His voice was tight and low, the voice of a man who does not want the next table to hear. The card got declined. In front of everyone. I had to make Lorna put the whole thing on hers. Do you have any idea how that looked? You couldn't have called me first. I let a moment go by. The morning bells of a church I could not see were ringing across the rooftops. I did not invite 14 people to a dinner I could not afford. Greg, I said, I only stopped paying for one. I was never asked to attend. He got louder, then remembered the hallway, then got quieter and meaner. It was Mother's Day. You've always said family matters more than money. You've said that my whole life. Family does matter more than money, I told him. That is exactly why you should have invited your mother, instead of inviting her card. He had no answer to that. So he reached for the oldest tool in his kit, the one that had always worked. The girls were asking about you. A little threat wrapped in a little sweetness. Come back to the machine, and the warmth comes back too. Then the girls can call me themselves, I said. They know my number. And I ended the call, not in anger. I simply had a sunrise to walk into, and I was not going to spend it holding the phone. I extended my stay a full week. I visited every place Paul had marked on the itinerary. I joined a small walking tour with 2 other widows, Ruth from Ohio and a sharp-eyed woman named Elaine from Maine, and the 3 of us laughed on a cliff path until my sides hurt. And I understood something I had been afraid to learn. Continuing my life was not a betrayal of Paul. Postponing it had been. When I flew home, Greg and Lorna asked to meet. I said yes, and I set the meeting at my own dining room table, in my own house, where the deed and the mug and the ledger all knew whose name they belonged to. They came on a Sunday. Greg walked in already talking, the way he does, describing the whole thing as a misunderstanding, a one-time mistake, something a family should not let blow up. He expected an emotional afternoon and, at the end of it, his card back. Lorna came in quiet. She had learnt some things in the week since the dinner. She had discovered that several gifts and household costs Greg had claimed to cover from his own paycheck had, in fact, been charged to me. Her quiet was not calm. It was the quiet of a woman recalculating her own marriage. I did not raise my voice. I have never seen the point of a raised voice. It only tells people how much they've upset you, which is information I prefer to keep. I set 3 things on the table between us. Paul's green ledger, cracked at the spine, a single typed page, separating the money I had gladly given from the money that had been taken sideways, and Raymond's letter, confirming the new arrangements in plain brown cardigan language. Greg looked at the page and his face went through several weathers. Then he found his footing and reached for anger, because anger felt better than the other thing. So this is it? You're cutting off your own granddaughters because you're mad at me? I opened the trust document and turned it so he could read it. Look, I said. Abby's tuition, Sophie's prescriptions, counselling if either of them ever needs it. Their real expenses. All of it protected. All of it paid straight to the people who provide it. None of it removed. I let him read to the bottom. Your daughters did not misuse my trust, Greg. You did. That is why their support stays, and your access does not. He had no answer. He looked at Lorna for help, and Lorna looked at the tablecloth. I slid the 1-page summary toward him. I am not asking for $1 of what I gave freely, I said. The braces are yours. The furnace is yours. The medicine is yours, and I'd pay it all again. But the hotel you never repaid, the dinners, the gas, the things you charged and told Lorna you'd covered, those come back. No interest. A monthly amount you can actually manage. I already wrote it down. You're humiliating me, he said. No, I answered, and I kept my voice as level as a shelf. You did that yourself, at a table for 14, with my name in your mouth and my card in your pocket. I am only declining to pay for the humiliation twice. Lorna spoke then, for the first time, so softly I almost missed it. How much of it was mine that I didn't know about? That, I said gently, is a conversation for the two of you, not for me. The meeting did not end with tears or hugs. It ended with Greg pushing back his chair, and Lorna gathering the summary page with careful hands, and the front door closing behind them with the ordinary click a door makes when nothing has been settled in anyone's favour except the truths. I sat alone at the table afterward and put my hand flat on Paul's green ledger. Some apologies, I thought, need to be held for a while before they can be answered. I was not ready to answer Greg. I was not sure he had apologised. He had only been caught. Abby came the following Saturday, on her own, without being asked, which is its own kind of answer. She stood on the porch holding a grocery bag, and inside it was nothing I needed and everything that mattered. A loaf of bread, a block of cheese, and a small carton of the tomato soup Paul used to like. She had remembered a thing about a grandfather she barely got to know. We made grilled cheese at the stove, the two of us, and she flipped hers too early and it fell apart. And we laughed the way I had laughed on the cliff path in Portugal. When we sat down, she looked at her plate instead of at me. "Grandma," she said, "I heard how they talked about you. For a long time. They'd plan a whole dinner, and then somebody would say, 'Well, tell Grandma so she can help with it,' and then you weren't even there. I didn't know what to do. I was a kid. I still kind of am, but I knew it was wrong, and I didn't say anything, and I'm sorry." I reached over and covered her hand with mine. Her hand was warm, 17, and already carrying more honesty than the grown people in her house. "You are not responsible for what the adults did, Abby," I told her, "and you do not have to choose sides in this. The trust that's there for you and your sister, it isn't a reward for being on my side, it's there because you're my granddaughters, full stop. Even if you never took my side at all, I need you to hear that. Your father's mistakes are not going to become your bill." She nodded, and her eyes went bright, and she did not let the tears fall, which told me she was more like me than either of us knew. "Was Grandpa really funny?" she asked, wiping her hands. "Mum says he was funny." "He was terrible at jokes," I said. "He'd forget the endings. But he could fix anything in this house, and he loved me out loud every single day. And that turned out to matter more than the endings." She smiled. We ate our lopsided grilled cheese, and for a little while my kitchen was full again, not because I had paid for it, but because someone had simply wanted to be there. The weeks after settled into something new. Greg communicated only when necessary, and I let him. I did not chase the silence. I have learned that not every quiet is a wound that needs tending. Some quiet is just space where a boundary is doing its work. Lorna and Greg went to counselling, though not for me, for the marriage that had been quietly built on a fault line she hadn't been allowed to see. Her anger, it turned out, was aimed mostly at the man who had hidden their real situation from her, and not at the woman who had finally stopped patching it. Abby kept visiting. Sophie started calling on Sunday evenings just to tell me about her week, and I planned another trip, on my own. This time, I did not wait for anyone's approval or anyone's calendar. I circled a place on a fresh map, and I did not ask a single soul whether it was too crowded, too late, or too tiring for me. A month after the meeting, Greg sent the first repayment installment. He sent it without a reminder, which is not nothing. His message was 4 words. "I understand why you did it." I looked at it for a while, then I typed back 3. Understanding is a beginning. I did not tell him all was forgiven, because it was not, and I have stopped saying comfortable things that aren't true. I simply left the door where it was, not locked against him, not propped open for him to walk through and take again. A door he could earn his way back through, with behavior, not with a well-timed toast. It is the beginning of summer now, and I am on my back porch, where the light comes in gold through the screen at the end of the day. Abby is beside me, sorting photographs from Portugal into an album, holding each one up to the light. "You look happy in this one," she keeps saying, surprised, as if she had never seen it before. She hadn't. Paul's blue travel wallet sits on the table between us, and beside it, Paul's green ledger, closed. I have kept that little notebook since Portugal. Not amounts Paul's ledger held those. Just a line, now and then, when one arrives. Tonight I wrote this one. They set a place for my name at that table and forgot the woman it belonged to. So I brought all of me home and kept the current for my own house. Sometimes dignity does not arrive with shouting. Sometimes it arrives on a warm porch in June, in the gold end of the light, with your granddaughter naming the woman in the photographs happy, and a blue wallet full of places you are finally, at last, going to see.